Welcome to our 5-minute Bible study today in the book of Romans. Today we are beginning Romans chapter 13. Paul is discussing how Christians should live as a saved people. In the first part of chapter 13, he specifically addresses how believers should live in reference to the state or to the government. Paul has some interesting advice to give us and some interesting instructions. Let's hear his words. He says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment upon themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do what is right, but only for those who do what is wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason." All right. Paul wants us to understand that as Christian believers, as followers of Jesus, we are to be good citizens of the state. Paul definitely recognizes the state or the government as authorized by God for the conduct of society, for the well-ordering of life in community. And so he says it's important that we live as good citizens. We should recognize that the authority of the state is proper when it's properly exercised. And therefore, Christians are called to be good citizens. One of the accusations against the early church was that they tended to disrupt the normal natural order of society, that they tended to be rebels against the state. Paul wants to be clear that this is not so. That Christians make the best citizens because they recognize the proper authority of the state and they give proper allegiance to those who govern over them. Now keep in mind, Paul is writing to Christians in the city of Rome. And the state he's talking about is the Roman Empire. But he says as long as we can, and the state does not demand of us that which is contrary to the way of God, we are to be in proper authority, that is proper allegiance to the authorities, and we are to be good citizens of the state. Of course, that lesson is still true for us today. Christian believers should make the best citizens. We should be loyal members of our community. We should support proper authority. And we should be recognized as those who are valuable to the life of society. Now, God, of course, is our first allegiance. But we recognize and understand that God has authorized the state for the proper ordering of society. And therefore, we give allegiance as it is right to do so. Notice how Paul wraps up this session. This is very important. It's in verse 6. He says, "This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, then pay taxes. If you owe revenue, then pay revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor." I feel certain that when Paul wrote these words, he was thinking of Jesus' comment. Do you remember that time when some folks came to Jesus and said, "Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" They were trying to trap Jesus with the question. Is it right, they said, to pay taxes to Caesar or not? And Jesus said, "Well, show me the coins you use. Show me the money you use." And so they brought out a Roman coin, which is what they used. He said, "Whose inscription, whose picture is on that coin?" They said, "Well, Caesar's." And so Jesus said, "Well, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God." And I think that's what Paul is reflecting here. He says, when you owe proper taxes, pay them. When you owe proper revenue, pay it. That's to recognize the authority of the state. There are some things that are due to Caesar, and you should give them to him. But there are some things that are due to God, and you should give that to him. Our ultimate allegiance belongs only to God. Only to God. So you give to God what is God's. But there's a lesser allegiance that is owed to the state as good citizens. Now, I realize that there are times in world history when the state becomes contrary to the ways of God, and that's a whole different story. But I think what Paul means here is when the state is functioning as it should, then you give proper allegiance to the state. You give to Caesar what rightfully belongs to Caesar, and you give to God what rightfully belongs to God. So in the society in which we live, which is a free society, a democratic society, we should function as good citizens. We should be the best citizens in our society because we properly give allegiance to the state as institute of God, but our ultimate allegiance we give to God alone. And I think that's what Paul is teaching us. Well, you have a great day today, and I hope to see you next time in our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Romans.